We are really interested in how public art can alter the way people experience their city and bring them into community. The first public art programs in the United States were started as a part of the New Deal, using 1% of each federal building's cost for art. Fast forward to 1977, when Pittsburgh recognized the importance of public art, and this council passed legislation that created a 1% for art program. Our campaign started 2 years ago because we haven't seen much public art created through this program, and the message was heard from people in and out of city government that this program, the 1977 ordinance, was hard to enforce. As we looked at other city and state percent for art programs, we noticed differences in Pittsburgh's law that explains the state of reality we see today. First, the Pittsburgh ordinance is severely limited. As currently written, it appears the 1% for art requirement applies only to construction or renovation of a public building, and even then, only when it is a municipal project with a city department in charge of the project. Council passed this law in 1977, when municipal construction and investment in buildings was done in Pittsburgh in ways that are significantly different than today. About 3 years later, in 1980, Pittsburgh implemented the Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance Act, known as LERTA, which finances revitalization through tax incentives. And in 1990, Pennsylvania passed the Tax Increment Financing Act, known as TIF. LERTA and TIFs are modern methods of municipal financing which account for a sizable amount of our development and which may not trigger the percent for art requirements. The other significant change came in the last decade when we moved the bulk of Pittsburgh's planning and development personnel and budget to the Urban Redevelopment Authority. So today, the URA is much more likely to be in charge of a construction or renovation project rather than a city department as contemplated by our existing percent for art legislation. The other things that distinguish Pittsburgh's percent for art legislation are that the Art Commission has incredibly short periods of time to respond to matters submitted to them. The Commission has no mechanism to intervene in construction or renovation plans where a city department doesn't proactively come to them with recommendations for public art. And the legislation limits use of funds required for public art to the specific development project, and no amount can be used for any other projects. Our current ordinance forces the Art Commission to act in a reactive way and usually deprives it from using unexpended sums for public art in neighborhoods that aren't seeing municipal construction and renovation. For all these reasons, it is timely for council to re-look at our percent for art law and consider updating it. Our campaign has found that significant public support exists for creating an expansive, inclusive, and transparent system for using public money for public art in public spaces and neighborhoods around the city, a program more on par with Philadelphia's or Seattle's. We urge council to create a new model for Pittsburgh. In this new model, we would like to see, number one, all development, public or private, above the 50,000 threshold of our current ordinance would be subject to the percent for art. Number two, all of Pittsburgh's neighborhoods benefit from having artists work with community members to create vehicles of mutual self-expression that take form in public art. We could do this like Philadelphia does, by requiring that 5% of the percent for art contribution be dedicated to educational programming about communities and public art, an initiative they call the percent for community. Percent for community projects take the form of artist workshops, arts education pamphlets, and audio tours. Number 3, open public commissioning panels set up for decision-making processes that engage community members, give area residents a weighted percent of the vote, and thus ownership of projects that will inhabit their public space. Ultimately, open panels will build a foundation of transparency, integrity, and ownership by the given community for the entire public art-making process. Number 4, community development growth created with economic stimuli directed at the cultural workers who live and work in our neighborhoods. Pittsburgh artist. We would like to see a residency requirement similar to those found in other Percent for Art programs across the country. One that favors Pittsburgh's artists into staying, thriving, and contributing to our city's growth and livability for all residents. Number 5, stimulation of our local economy by the employment of Pittsburgh resident fabricators in the construction of public art. Typically, public artworks are stipulated for a 25 to 30-year durability. We would like to see current minority business enterprise and women business enterprise contracting goals increased by 5% to a figure that more closely matches our community profile for public art fabricating, contracting, and for commissioned artists. City council members favor city contracts going to city residents and their businesses. We've talked with all 9 council members or their staff. Quite frankly, we've noticed a shift in the conversation from whether to do this to how we can realize the full possibility of Pittsburgh's Percent for Art. We may need an assortment of strategies to accomplish this, including changing the zoning code, amending the ordinance, and initiating a dialogue with the URA about the URA policy towards public art and development. We are thrilled to be at this stage in the conversation, and we look forward to working with Council to make this a reality. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you very much. I do want to say that we are joined by Council President Kraus as well. Thank you, Councilman, for being here.